All right. So we're here for our addictions, right? That's the most important thing. But it's an amazing bonus I got when I came in. It's how to live all of life. But a lot of my addictions was due to, drinking and food is like wanting people to like me, wanting control over everything. I know the answer. It's money, success. We can't help it. Look, we were brought up to think we had to be successful, better than other people. We're even taught, what gets me, and a lot of people not going to agree with this statement. I always hear people say, I want to build up my self-esteem. What is self-esteem? It has the word self in it, ego. So what we're actually saying is, if I could dress better than somebody else, have a better car, have more money, be more personable than them, be whatever I think success is, that will build my self-esteem. But we get self-esteem through humility. We get self-esteem when we're not walking around and worrying about, when I go to a job and I'm worrying about the boss is going to yell at me or something's going to happen or a coworker is going to say something to me. That's in fear. Spirituality is a way of strength. And it says in this book, in Bill's story, common sense will become uncommon sense. The way I was taught was through self-will to control life. But all of a sudden it was reversed and turned around when I started to have this spiritual awakening. So we'll go on to page 417. Okay, here's the main thing here. So it says, and this is really, really interesting because they always talk about the problem solution. About the third sentence down, it says on page 417 in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, when I stopped living in the problem and began living in the answer, the problem went away. So I always try to control life. That was the problem. If I went to a meeting or told a bunch of people in my life, I have this problem with somebody, I'm making it more real. The answer to the problem, the spiritual solution is that there really is no reality to that. When I get quiet and I pray, usually the answer I get is that it really doesn't matter. Well, what other people say or think, it's really none of my business. It doesn't matter. And when I make it part of me, I'm miserable. It talks about in our book about resentment is the number one. Do you realize, and when I hear people share, 99.99% of our resentments and our upset in life is due to people. So here we're going to be taught how to have that spiritual awakening where you have that change of conscience and change of thinking. So it says either you're in the problem or in the solution. But it says when I was in the answer, the problem went away. So here we're getting the answer. It's going to tell us here in this next paragraph is the answer. So if you want the answer, and if you have something bothering you today, this is the answer here. Now you could read this 100 times, you could do the steps 100 times, you could go to 100 meetings, you could have 100 sponsees, but if you really want the solution, listen through your heart and instill this into you, and then you'll have that life-changing thing. And we talked about the third step, prayer. So here we go. Acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. Now in this book it talks about the answer to all our problems. So accepting our problems. So to me, it's having that love through God's will, step 3, love, patience, and tolerance, having that higher consciousness, right? Where it's not about me, I, or my. It's about the universal, a lot of philosophies, again, AA is made up of all these philosophies in religion, Eastern, Western, it's not cult like a lot of people say. If you read the steps and you read this big book, you could read any philosophy book in the world and any religion they talk even about, we have the step 4, and confession and whatever it is, and prayer and meditation, right? That's Eastern Western philosophy, everything in this book, but especially the first 167 pages. But this chapter is so inspiring, it's amazing. So, and it says here, when I am disturbed, now it's going to tell us why we're disturbed. I didn't know what the reason was, so I couldn't resolve the problem. It is because I find some person, place, or thing, or some situation, some fact in my life unacceptable to me. Okay? I can find no serenity until I accept that person, place, or thing as being the way it's supposed to be at this moment. So, I couldn't accept people who bothered me or tried to get me upset because I was coming from the self. The answer is letting go, surrendering to a higher consciousness. Inside of us, look, we all have this love, tolerance, and patience. It's all in there, this blissful nature. We just were created, look, the other parts of our body and our mind were created in pretty well perfection. But we were given this God-given talent to think on a higher level, but we misused it. Yeah, you should be in fear, all right, if somebody puts a gun to your head or you're in the wilderness and a lion is going to attack you, a bear, But no, we got to use it. Somebody said when 20 years ago, we walked in a school or classroom, somebody says, oh, I don't like the way you're dressed, or somebody looks at you the wrong way. That's what we use it for. How crazy are we? And we always thought everybody else was crazy. So now I can only sit there, it says here, not and smile, right? We're like an airplane. All our problems and all these situations in the world is down here. Again, this all has to do with the three-dimensional. We want to go to the fourth dimension. It also has to do with the five senses. On page 85, it talks about that sixth sense, rising above all these initial problems and having that sixth sense. Don't forget our addictions to food, alcohol, and other things, drugs, is related to the sense, touch, feel, all of these things, right? The seeing. So we can go out and enjoy and see the world for what it is, but realize the falseness of it all. To realize and comprehend that there is a falseness to it. It's not true. The only trueness is within us, and within what's called the soul. It's a soul, but we live everything on the human experience. Like I say, when you observe these things now, like the anger, look, first of all, the past is depression, the future is anxiety. When we live in the eternal present, and if you get angry, resentful from now, just observe it. Like looking at a movie, it's not really, see, all of these things aren't true. All of these lower level things, because they're coming from a false premise. You're trying to get people to change from a false premise. Your false premise is, again, it's explained it here. If everything else outside of me was perfect, I'd be fine. Let me ask you a question. If you were to walk in a house, could you walk through the door, a wall, to get into your house, or do you have to walk through the door? That's the way life is. We don't want to accept that life is just this, so we try to keep on walking into that wall, right? Every day banging our head against it, trying to change it. We can't change and put a door right in the, where there's no door, right? So the same with our life. We're trying to always set these boundaries and look at other people and what they did and what they did. But the answer is to change of perception. It says, absolutely nothing happens in God's world by mistake. Until I can accept my alcoholism and food addiction, any other addiction, I cannot stay sober. Unless I accept life completely on life terms, I cannot be happy. So, here, let me just digress here with the food addiction. Okay, a lot of people, I bring this up because in Overeaters Anonymous, the food addiction, we're trying to change our habits. We're trying to go and figure, if I just have this food, 3 meals a day, weigh my food. Not that any of those things really don't help. I don't want to put that down. But I'm saying this, like it says here, I have to accept things completely. I have to accept God's grace when it comes to food. And I always bring up the water. The change of perception, having a change where we don't want all this, and I always get into a lot more of this, but I'll just touch upon it now. Man-made food, synthetic foods, they have 50 ingredients in them, right? All poisons. If anybody wants to know my diet, it's one ingredient. Everything is natural, one ingredient. It has 1/3 the calories. It's natural, it's nutritious. It doesn't have those poisons in it. But I say to drink alone, have that God consciousness, that clarity. Not have these drinks, 1,200 calories, all that sugar and that synthetic stuff and the oil and the salt and the craziness. Look at all the diseases we have and all the upset. Same with alcohol. Do I want to be like I used to be, drinking all this alcohol, have synthetic drugs in my body? We have a better way.